Fox News alert, former FBI Director James Comey is back for more with congressional lawmakers. Question, will his memory improve? I'm Harris Faulkner. This is Outnumbered Overtime. Comey is testifying before a joint House panel for the second time in just 2 weeks. Some House Republicans are telling Fox News Comey's briefing to President Trump on an anti-Trump dossier will be a big focus of the questioning. The former FBI chief is also expected to be pressed on former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn's claim that the FBI pushed him into not bringing an attorney to his White House interview. Comey recently admitted normal FBI procedure was not followed when Flynn was questioned. Also, former Attorney General Loretta Lynch is set to testify in the coming days. A lot happening. Let's get the news. Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel on Capitol Hill. Mike?
Harris, good afternoon to you. Former FBI Director James Comey is on the hot seat again, facing questions from Republicans on House Judiciary and oversight. Comey's been here on Capitol Hill today for about 3.5 hours after a 6-hour grilling back on December 7th. There's been some tension between members on the committee and him over the FBI's handling of the Hillary Clinton email case. One of the Republicans in that hearing told us a few minutes ago the FBI is not making this process easy.
Consistently, the FBI has had legal counsel there to try to discourage the answering of certain questions that might be good for the American people to know, and yet oftentimes they will suggest that it's part of an ongoing investigation and discourage the witnesses from testifying.
California Republican Congressman Darrell Issa, a member of the Judiciary Committee, predicted in a Fox News interview that a court will overturn former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn's conviction for lying to the FBI. Issa blamed Justice Department and FBI misconduct and criticized Comey for saying the Bureau was able to question Flynn because the Trump White House was not as organized. As for Democrats, much of their focus is on allowing special counsel Robert Mueller to complete his investigation and write his final report. And one Democrat called today's hearing with Comey a waste of time.
The Republicans will continue to rake Jim Comey over the coals for as long as they can, and it appears to be at the direction of President Trump. So whenever he decides that he's finished with dragging Director Comey through the mud, then I guess the House Republicans on the Judiciary Committee will call off their inquisition.
One Republican in the hearing says Comey has been consistent in the way he's answered questions, which sounds like a fair amount of he doesn't know or doesn't recall. Harris?
Wow. I guess we can add that to the list of the 245 times that he's already invoked that. Mike Emanuel, thank you very much. Republican Congressman Darrell Issa of the House Judiciary Committee joins me now. You're in California in close contact with your colleagues and making news by saying that you're predicting something completely different will happen with Michael Flynn. Not a sentencing, but what and why?
Well, the Judge Sullivan has dealt with this before. You might remember that he picked up the Ted Stevens case only to find that prosecutors had violated the late senator's rights, lied, and withheld information. In this case, he's faced with a similar situation in that he's seeing a general who was lied to and told he wasn't a target. He was basically not needing to worry about Miranda, didn't need a lawyer, so that they could trap him into a lie where they knew something, didn't disclose it, and then asked him a question in order to get him in a situation where they then had leverage on him. So this kind of misconduct can only be held accountable by a federal judge, and this is a federal judge who goes all the way back through three different presidents, and is a no-nonsense judge.
Yeah, it's interesting. How surprised were you to hear James Comey admit that it hadn't been handled correctly with Flynn?
And not a bit. They've been playing fast and loose with how do they get the president for a long time.
So let me step in for 1 second. Do you think he said that because he felt like they got busted on this, or was this just something that was a mistake?
Well, every once in a while he remembers something, and in this case, He apparently remembered that most White Houses would have said, we're not making these people available. They will all be represented by lawyers. There won't be any such thing as just a harmless question. And that appears to be exactly the problem. They took advantage and continue to take advantage of a president who's making information available in an extraordinary way, very different than President Obama. And in this case, there's a real question of, did they get what they want from Flynn? Well, apparently they did, but they did by trapping him into a lie.
Do you feel that James Comey, in the words of Democrat Congressman Hank Johnson of the great state of Georgia, do you think that Republicans are raking James Comey over the coals? That's his quote.
Well, I like Hank. He and I served together for a long time. But the fact is that when you have new developments of things such as months and months in which they essentially dragged out dating a 302 long after they were essentially using it, these wrongdoings in front of the FISA court, and Comey is directly involved, there's certainly a reason to make the record complete. What I will say, and I challenge Hank Johnson, as new information comes forward, not to let the new Democratic majority in the House shut down the kind of discovery that is necessary in a free democracy.
I mean this with all due respect, and even some of your own colleagues in the House have criticized how this has been handled. Is James Comey better at this than Republicans are? I mean, you've had several bites at the apple. I mean, and 245 times last time either he didn't know or he didn't remember about sometimes basic stuff. I mean, does he have an advantage in any of this that we don't know about?
He has a huge advantage. He has the clock. The administration, if you will, always has the clock. And in this case, the clock is running out. So what would normally be 245, I don't remember, 245 demands to this to Department of Justice to provide at least some of the information that he says he doesn't remember. There's no time for that. And this Department of Justice, under no real management, continues to withhold information and even cause him to withhold information on those occasions in which he knew something, Harris.
What do you mean, no real management?
Well, it's very clear that between the time President Trump came into office and now, these U.S. attorneys and the FBI have continued to do whatever they want. It's not just the special prosecutor. You know, Jeff Sessions was a good senator, but he clearly did not take control of the Department of Justice, and they continue to withhold information. A good example is even the Fast and Furious investigation that had already been essentially settled by the court. They dragged their feet for over a year trying not to give us the information.
From the House Judiciary Committee? I mean, did you have conversations with him?
Say that again?
Did you talk with him about this, Jeff Sessions?
I did. And, you know, it wasn't an area he was recused, but it was an area in which he allowed the so-called career professionals to continue to not give information that an Obama appointee, Amy Berman Jackson, had told them to give us. So this is a Department of Justice that institutionally continues to not want to cooperate with Congress. This is where the new Attorney General is going to have to come in and at least restore some level of cooperation in Congress's legitimate oversight, and that'll include the Senate and hopefully a Democratic House that still wants to know about people's rights being trampled on.
Congressman Issa, I so appreciate your transparency. I ask these questions because it's so late in 2018 and Republicans have had a shot to get to talk with James Comey. Heck, he's called into public radio. He pretty much talks to everybody. So it's a little hard to believe that we've gotten this deep into 2018 without many answers from him. That's why I asked those questions, and I knew you'd be transparent about it.
No, it's a fair question, and investigation after investigation by myself, my predecessor, Henry Waxman, and others, you see this slowness that happens, and slowness really is the advantage when you have something that has to be investigated. It doesn't matter what the wrongdoing is.
From the great state of California today, Congressman Darrell Issa, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Harris.
Let's get to this Fox News alert now. Robert Mueller is reportedly pushing now again for a sit-down interview with President Trump. The president's legal team submitted those written answers to questions from the special counsel a few weeks ago. And now his attorney, Rudy Giuliani, is telling Fox News' Chris Wallace this weekend there is no way a sit-down is going to happen.
good luck after what they did to Flynn and the way they trapped him into perjury, and no sentence for him. 14 days for Papadopoulos. I did better on traffic violations than they did with Papadopoulos.
So when you say good luck, you're saying no way, no interview.
They're a joke over my dead body.
Kevin Corke is outside the White House. Kevin.
Harris, good afternoon. Rudy Giuliani's declaration notwithstanding, it is apparent that this White House under no circumstances will allow Bob Mueller to sit down with the president. It is manifestly not going to happen. Now, that said, it is also important to point out, Harris, that the president has submitted written responses to questions posed by the special counsel's investigators. And to hear Alan Dershowitz tell it, Mueller's team shouldn't expect any more than that.
This investigation, as far as Trump's concerned, is over unless they try to subpoena him. And then we have a constitutional conflict because Trump asserts Article 2 and other constitutional rights. We go to court, and we don't have a Mueller report for a long, long time.
As for the White House, the president, as you can well imagine, has adroitly suggested that he wants to talk. But I would just point you to this, Harris. If his tone on Twitter is a window into his thinking, it's probably a good idea that he not avail himself to do that. He wrote this on Twitter: the Russian witch hunt hoax started as the insurance policy long before I even got elected, is very bad for our country. They are entrapping people for misstatements, lies, or unrelated things that took place many years ago. Nothing to do with collusion, a Democrat scam. About which Jim Comey, who, as Mike Emanuel reported, is very busy this afternoon, tweeted this. This is from the president of our country, lying about the lawful execution of a search warrant issued by a federal judge. Shame on Republicans who don't speak up at this moment for the FBI, the rule of law, and the truth. Of course, Comey also referencing the, let's just call it the collection of materials from Michael Cohen's office. This whole thing has just been a devastating back and forth, Harris, not just between these two men, but between very well-ensconced institutions here in Washington. And there is a sense now that this could go very badly for the country if they don't figure it out soon. Harris?
That is a very interesting foretelling message that you're talking about. I'm going to scoop up some information from the other side of the political aisle. Kevin, thank you very much.
You bet.
Neil Quinter is a former Assistant Attorney General in Maryland and a former Chief Counsel to Senator Dianne Feinstein. Neil, thank you for being with me. I also want to mention this because when we've had you on the program before, I don't think I had, you handled the consideration of the impeachment of President Clinton for Senator Feinstein. Could you just tell me a little bit about how you see this process compared with your experience doing that?
Well, I think you have a much more extensive set of potential wrongdoing involved here. There was a lot of investigation of the Whitewater transaction, but that's not what led to directly to the impeachment of President Clinton. The impeachment of President Clinton was really over one lie. And you have a much wider range of alleged or potential wrongdoing by President Trump here. So the scope is a lot larger.
Well, you say that, but we haven't seen evidence of anything moving along. And I know that we don't know all of what Robert Mueller has, but what are you looking at in terms of this case?
Well, I think we have a pretty long record so far. There have been 36 people and companies that have been indicted so far. There's been a lot of wrongdoing laid out in those documents. And, you know, we have some pretty clear attempts to obstruct justice. Just because they've happened in public doesn't mean that they're not obstruction. So I'm keeping my eye on that. And, of course, the question that Professor Dershowitz talked about potentially subpoenaing the president, I think is a very live question. I don't know this. I just know what's been reported.
What do you mean by live question?
There is a subpoena battle, a grand jury subpoena battle that's playing out right now in the federal court in D.C. It's sealed. I don't have direct knowledge of it. But on Friday afternoon, they shut down the entire fifth floor of the courthouse to hear arguments in that case. At least one former prosecutor has speculated on the record that it could be over a subpoena of the president himself. So it's all under seal, but if you think there's already been high-ranking officials that have cooperated
All right, let me
this.
step in there. I want to visit the situation, if we can, of General Michael Flynn and the claims by some on the right and those who support him particularly that he was entrapped. I mean, even James Comey has admitted that they didn't handle his interview the way that protocol would have dictated in terms of telling him to get an attorney. That's problematic, isn't it?
I think the Mueller investigation has really followed standard investigative and prosecutorial techniques. I don't think that many investigators and law enforcement professionals encourage witnesses to get attorneys. Of course, they have to cooperate.
So why would James Comey say it wasn't followed the correct way?
You'd have to ask Director Comey about that.
I imagine they're doing that right now on Capitol Hill. I wanted to get your take on it, though, because when you have that former head of the FBI say that one person wasn't treated the way that others would have been, I'm just curious to get your response to it.
Everything that I've seen has been consistent with normal practices.
Neil Kinter, thank you very much for your time. Some frontrunners are starting to emerge in the Democrat search for the perfect 2020 candidate. Who came out on top in a poll of likely Iowa caucus goers? And should the Trump administration be worried? Plus, Congress fighting over the border wall with the government shutdown on the line. What will the president do as Democrats stand firm in their opposition?
He's off on the deep end here, and all he's going to get with his temper tantrum is a shutdown. He will not get a wall.
We are moving closer now to the deadline for a partial government shutdown looming over Capitol Hill. Congress will with just a few days left to reach an agreement that would keep some key federal agencies open over Christmas. This as the Trump administration doubles down on the president's threat to reject any deal that does not provide $5 billion in border spending. Meanwhile, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says Democrats are not going to budge either.
President Trump should understand there are not the votes for the wall in the House or the Senate. He is not going to get the wall in any form. And we should not let a temper tantrum, threats, push us in the direction of doing something that everybody, even our Republican colleagues, know is wrong.
Peter Doocy is following what's happening now on Capitol Hill with us. Peter?
Harris, if this funding fight is going to be about the wall, House leaders are trying to figure out right now if they could pass a spending bill that just funds the wall and nothing else.
Everyone knows, just good common sense, we should be able to secure our southern border. We need to stand firm and get that done. And I do think, contrary to what Pelosi has said, I do think there are the votes in the House to get that done. I just hope our leadership puts that bill on the floor, the full $5 billion for the wall.
If $5 billion worth of wall money was to pass the House, it would have a really tough time clearing the Senate. But the White House still wants this fight.
We're going to do whatever is necessary to build the border wall to stop this ongoing crisis of illegal immigration.
And that means
this is a very, if it comes to it, absolutely. This is a very fundamental issue. At stake is the question of whether or not the United States remains a sovereign country.
Now, those Democrats who insist there won't be any wall money this week are offering up a plan B for the border.
We could be scanning the vehicles coming into the United States to see if they contain contraband, narcotics, firearms, even victims of human trafficking. Fewer than 1 out of 5 vehicles are being scanned now. I asked the people at Customs and Border Protection, what would it cost to have scanners to scan all the vehicles coming in? They said $300 million. That's a far cry from $5 billion and a much more effective way to have a secure border.
Dozens of Republican lawmakers who either lost elections or just have other stuff to do and may have had their offices taken away from them already have left Washington, D.C. They say they will not be back for any more votes this year, and that makes gauging support for anything really, really tough. Harris.
Peter Doocy, thank you very much. Let's bring in now House Majority Whip Steve Scalise of Louisiana. Great to see you today, Congressman. You know, when you hear Senator Schumer and Nancy Pelosi on the House side say that there are not the votes for this, Senate not so surprising. Why is the story so different on the House side?
Well, Harris, it's good to be with you. And I think you saw Chuck Schumer having another
one of his tantrums. You know, there was a Schumer shutdown not too long ago, and he didn't fare too well from that. And he won't fare too well here again. You know, when he's saying he wants to deny the president the ability to build the wall. Look, the president ran on securing America's border. This fight is about securing America's border, not just the wall. It also includes other technology that's being mentioned to scan vehicles, but also to protect our Border Patrol agents. Because, Harris, you see with this caravan that's coming over, Homeland Security has already identified more than 600 convicted criminals in the caravan, and they've been attacking our Border Patrol agents. We need to make sure they have the money to be safe, doing their job, keeping America safe.
Yeah, you know, there are competing optics in all of this and reality. So you're talking about the groups of caravans now, some 7,000 people who are clustered in Tijuana waiting to get into our country. And then you also have the death of a little 7-year-old who was in the custody of the United States after crossing over illegally. It is difficult at this point to come up with answers. So what will it take?
Well, and it was a horrible tragedy to see what happened to the baby that was being brought over, part of the caravan as they were coming over in Mexico. They weren't taking proper care of the people that are coming over. And what the president has said is, look, if you're seeking asylum, there is a legal way to do it. But frankly, the people that are in this caravan were offered asylum and jobs by the Mexican government, and they turned that down. So it's not about asylum. This is about the rule of law. There's a legal way to come to America. Just follow that process. Don't be part of a caravan that's, again, infiltrated by a lot of convicted criminals and potential terrorists. Every day, on average, 10 known terrorists try to enter America. This is about keeping America safe.
Congressman Scalise, what do you make of Senator Dick Durbin's offer to spend just $300 million rather than border wall type money like $5 billion for searching vehicles in a different way? Is that taking seriously on Capitol Hill?
Well, I'm glad that he's at least recognizing that you have to be more creative about securing the border and acknowledging that people do come over to bring drugs. There's a lot of human trafficking that happens across the border. In fact, last year, our ICE agents, which Pelosi wants to get rid of, ICE actually saved more than 900 kids from human trafficking. This is really going on our border. It's about border security. There's a legal way to come here. Follow the law if you want to come here. But we've got to make sure that we're securing the border. President Trump is committed to securing our border. Let's just stand up for rule of law.
But have you talked with the president recently about this topic and just gauged how serious he is about a partial shutdown?
I did. I talked to the president about this a few days ago, and he's very passionate about this. He cares about securing America's border. He talked about it and campaigned on it. And, of course, it was an integral part of the election when he ran against Hillary Clinton. The American people knew this was one of the things that was front and center, that you've got a president saying he's going to try to keep America safe, and it's important that we secure the border. It's a bipartisan issue. Wherever you stand on immigration policy in general, most people in this country do believe you ought to secure the border. There's funding that goes along with it. Let's make sure we get the president the money he needs to keep America safe.
Well, I hear a lot of positivity in your voice. I mean, when I brought up Dick Durbin, you see the positive nature of, well, at least they're looking at the situation because they have to, Democrats on the other side of the aisle. I want to give you last word on what happens, the optics, who gets blamed if the government is a partial shutdown, and how many people that truly does affect, because the numbers are moving.
Well, Harris, I think it's real important that we continue to let the American people know just what is happening at the border, just what kind of people try to come over illegally. Some might be coming over here for work, but some are coming here to bring drugs, to human traffic, to prey upon our young children. And there are clear examples. Again, last year alone, our ICE agents saved over 900 kids from human trafficking. So this is happening at the border. There's a legal way to come to this country. If you want to seek asylum, or if you want to stand in line like millions of other people that are waiting to come here legally. America's a nation of immigrants, but we're also a nation of laws. Let's stand up for the rule of law and keep America safe.
House Majority Whip Steve Scalise, this holiday season, thank you for your time and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Harris.
A federal judge declaring Obamacare unconstitutional. So what will be the effect of that ruling, and will Congress be able to pass a better health care law? A live report with reaction. Stay close. New developments now after a federal judge in Texas has ruled Obamacare is unconstitutional, putting coverage for 20 million people in limbo. That decision is expected to be appealed, setting up a likely Supreme Court level fight. President Trump tweeted this today. The deductible which comes with Obamacare is so high that it is practically not even usable. Hurts families badly. We have a chance working with the Democrats to deliver great health care. A confirming Supreme Court decision will lead to great health care results for Americans. Doug McElway live in Washington with the news on this. Doug?
Good afternoon, Harris. The first thing that people should know is that there will be no immediate changes to Obamacare. Pending appeals, perhaps all the way to the Supreme Court, the law remains intact. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services says, quote, the exchanges are still open for business and we will continue with open enrollment. There's no impact to current coverage or coverage in a 2019 plan. In Friday's ruling, federal Judge Reed O'Connor sided with 20 state attorneys general that requiring people to pay for insurance coverage through the individual mandate is unconstitutional because last year's tax law eliminated the penalty for not having health insurance. Many believe O'Connor's ruling is overly broad, including Republican Senator Susan Collins of Maine. She expects O'Connor's ruling will be overturned.
I'm not sure where it will occur, but there's no reason why the individual mandate provision can't be struck down and keep all of the good provisions of the Affordable Care Act, such as coverage for people with pre-existing conditions.
But even among those Republicans who want to see Obamacare end, there is support for coverage of pre-existing conditions.
I think government never does big things really well. I'm for more of a step-by-step, and I want to start with the first step of people with pre-existing conditions.
Many Democrats believe that Judge O'Connor's ruling may come back to haunt Republicans.
And now this issue is alive and well again. The Republicans have no alternative to the Affordable Care Act, and they've been refusing up until this point to even sit down with us.
Whatever appeals lie ahead, Obamacare remains deeply dependent on healthy young people to support older, less healthy patients. And with young people absolved of paying the individual mandate penalty, the law really is struggling to maintain itself. Harris?
Doug McElway, thank you very much. Let me bring in now Republican Congressman Louis Gohmert. And for this discussion, it is worthy to note a former Texas state judge. So he has considered things like this in his history. Great to see you today, Congressman. Thank you for being with me.
Great to be with you, Harris.
Let's jump in. Why can't you keep what people say they like in polling widely and just get rid of the mandate? Why can't you do what Senator Collins says is possible?
Well, actually, to borrow from Shakespeare's Hamlet, Chief Justice Roberts and the Democrats are hoisted by their own petard. They all made it very clear that the individual mandate was the absolutely essential element. Roberts, in his opinion, of course, he said it was not a tax at page 14, and 40 pages later, he says the only way it's constitutional, not by Commerce Clause, only because of their taxing authority. You remove what the Democrats and Roberts said was the absolutely essential element, the individual mandate, which we did in the tax cut bill a year ago, and the whole thing has to fall. They're the ones that said it. It does have to fall. The whole thing hung on the individual mandate, and now that tax is zero. It's gone away, so the act must fall. Their words will come back to haunt them. But now this garbage about we have no alternative, I know it sounds good to say that, but it's just not true. We passed a bill in the House, and the Senate lacked one vote getting a bill through so that we could add a conference committee, and we still can do that. Senator McCain, God rest his soul, is not there, but we ought to be able to get something done. Why wait for the Democrats? Let's stay in session. The people of America have health care needs that are at stake. Let's stay in session. Let's get it done before the Democrats become the obstructionists. Get it passed while we've passed funding for the wall.
All right, and what you're saying is stay in session basically over the Christmas holiday season to get all of these things done, because you don't have that many legislative days left. So Congressman,
That's right.
I understand. I want to kind of tap into your former judgeship to see what this federal Judge O'Connor was looking at per those attorneys general that he agreed with.
Right. Well, he made clear, and you read the opinion, He cites the Obama administration, he cites Judge Roberts' opinion, both as saying that the absolutely essential element was the individual mandate. And that's why I referenced that. He makes clear in his opinion, he's using their own words. They said without the individual mandate, the whole thing must fall, and that's why Roberts upheld it. But now it should get to the Supreme Court, and Roberts is either going to have to say, you know what, I was just lying. I was trying to come up with some reason to uphold Obamacare, but or he can say, you know what, I said it and I meant it, and therefore the whole thing must fall.
Now, all right. What do you say to the 20 million people that potentially, if this makes its way through the courts and heads to the Supreme Court and gets called again unconstitutional, what do you say to all those people who will lose their health care?
I say we've got to have the alternative in place, ready to go. It's something that Boehner was not willing to do, but we need to do it. We need to have it ready to go.
Can you do it with just Republicans? You said that you could, but are there any Democrats that you could pull over with you?
I think we could. But there are precious few moderates in the House these days on the Democrat side, but we could do it before January 3rd. We did it before in the House. The first bill was bad, but the second one was okay. We could just, do it again and get something done before January 3rd. Otherwise, after January 3rd, we cannot do it without Democrats.
Wow.
So let's do it now.
That's a lot to get done. I don't know if you've been hearing Representative Mike Gallagher from Wisconsin on your side of the political aisle. He's willing to work every day of the year and can't wait to see everybody stay on the Hill. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Love talking to you, Harris. Thank you.
Likewise. All right. So we are looking at the profile search now. President Trump has named Mick Mulvaney as acting White House Chief of Staff. Is he the best choice for the job as the White House braces for a slew of Democrat-led investigations? Our power panel will slide in next. President Trump has tapped Budget Director Mick Mulvaney to be his acting Chief of Staff. Mulvaney will replace General John Kelly, who's leaving at the end of the year. The president tweeted this: Mulvaney will do a great job. But his pick is expected to face tough times ahead once Democrats retake the House and the special counsel's report is released. Let's slide in now the power panel. Noel McClure, Republican strategist and former Florida congressional candidate. Jason Nichols, Democrat commentator and professor at the University of Maryland. Good to see you both.
Thank you.
I'm going to start with this. Do you like this pick?
Actually, it's okay. And the reason I think it's okay, first of all, he's an acting, chief of staff. But I've got to tell you that I think that he can navigate his way through the troubled waters that are going to be coming through. I mean, we've got the Mueller stuff that's going to be coming. We've got, 2020
Why do you think
up.
he can do that?
Well, I think because, let's face it, he's had some comments. We all know his comments that he wasn't a Trump fan. Now he's on board and he's with the president with the agenda. So I think that he might actually be able to have some thoughtful conversations with people on the opposite side of the aisle. I really do, because, if you think that you're all for Trump and you won't be able to talk about anything but pro-Trump, I think that he may be able to get in the ear of some people that are not fans with him for politics.
Jason?
I agree that I think he's a good pick for the president. I disagree on the reason. I don't think he's going to work very well with Democrats because of the fact that he is a founder of the Freedom Caucus. He's pretty much on the very hard right. He's, a believer in fiscal austerity, which actually doesn't really even go along with the president's beliefs.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Because you are one of those Democrats that I like to have on the show who brings civility to the table. Not that all can't, but sometimes the conversations can get a little chippy. Yep. So what I hear Noel saying is that he has the ability to do that and reach across the aisle. And you're saying because you're seeing a difference in his politics that might not happen. What about just looking at the man?
Well, I think, his history with the Freedom Caucus, they have come in, particularly in the last administration, they were the obstructionists. So I think that many Democrats remember that. Many Democrats have had to deal with the 30 some odd members of the Freedom Caucus not really going along with anything that they wanted. And I don't think that he's going to have an easy time working with Democrats.
All right, so you made a point, Noel, this is an acting, and he may only stay for a few months or a year, we don't know, but the president has this decision to make again.
Yeah, he's going to have to make, he's going to have to make it again, unless this is a really great fit. I like the fact that the emphasis is on acting, because it gives President Trump the freedom to, if he finds someone, or if, Mick Mulvaney doesn't, enjoy the position, it gives both the president and Mulvaney a chance to bow out if it's not working. And I like that, because it's been an interesting revolving door to find a good fit for President Trump.
Well, General Kelly has been there for a while.
He has been there for a while, but, obviously,
well, nobody stays for 4 years anyway.
No, I guess not. I guess not. Good point.
Yeah. I think President Trump he's not going to be reined in by anybody, to be honest. He's a guy who goes on his gut. He makes his own decisions. Whether he'll listen to counsel, we'll see. I think he definitely, chose a good person in Mulvaney, because Mulvaney is an attorney, and he could not use. He can use as many good attorneys around him, capable attorneys, as he can.
And he said, he told me when I sat down with him in the White House last week that he wanted somebody strong as well. All right, power panel stays. All eyes on Iowa already. Jason, sharpen up. Democrat voters are favoring some old faces. When are y'all going to young up? Is that even a word? And a rising star, maybe this is it, in the 2020 race for the White House. So, can any of them beat President Trump?
Everyone, I'm Dana Perino. James Comey back on Capitol Hill behind closed doors as we speak. Our own Catherine Herridge will have the latest. Plus, a federal judge declares Obamacare unconstitutional. So how does that affect you if you use it or if you have pre-existing conditions? We'll explain. And what is President Trump's latest thinking on a possible shutdown over a border wall? We're live at the White House with that story and much more on the Daily Briefing.
2020 presidential election already heating up as a new poll of Democrat Iowa caucus goers shows the frontrunners in what is expected to be a crowded field. Former Vice President Joe Biden, wow, I've never heard of him. A commanding lead over Senator Bernie Sanders, also a newcomer, followed by an actual newcomer, Beto O'Rourke and Elizabeth Warren. Meanwhile, on the other side of the political aisle, Senator Susan Collins says there is nothing wrong with Republicans challenging President Trump in 2020. Watch it.
It's up to those individuals to decide whether or not they are going to oppose the president. They would probably have an uphill climb since he is the president and is in office now. But I see nothing wrong with challengers. That is part of our democratic system.
Noel can't wait to answer. Power panel stayed. Noel, Nick Poore, and Jason Nichols. So what do you think about what Senator Collins is saying?
Well, number one, I like Senator Collins, but I will tell you one thing. As a national fundraiser, that's really, it's a raw deal to have someone like a Kasich or, having somebody like a Jeff Flake or having anyone run against the incumbent. We need to be together as one. We need to be raising money as a collective effort. We do not need to, try to divide the party against who we already have, when Trump runs. That is absolutely...
I heard a little bless your heart in there. I like Senator Collins, she said, but here's what the president had to say when he sat down with me last week. I'm going to bring up John Kasich, and I'm going to bring up Arizona Senator Jeff Flake, because they say they may run against you in 2020.
I hope so. I think I have the greatest base in the history of politics. I have people that I love and that love me, frankly. That includes a lot of women. I got a tremendous percentage of women last time. Remember, I wasn't going to get women. I wasn't going to...
I interviewed some of the women for Trump. Yes.
I got women that they're the greatest. And I have tremendous women support.
Before we get to Democrats, why are you laughing?
Well, the president has had his issues with women and some of the statements that he's made. So I thought it was a little, interesting that he said that he gets all the support from women. One of the reasons I think you saw that blue wave and all those women elected was because women voters were, particularly in the suburbs, were reaching out against President Trump. So, I mean, I think he does have a base. I think he's correct about that. But the idea that he has this wide-ranging support for women, I beg to differ.
Speaking of women, I don't see any among the top frontrunners in this poll that were taken, and the only fresh face that we see if we go to the big wall is Beto O'Rourke. You are not a fan of Hillary Clinton, and you didn't hide it during the commercial, so I'm going to put you in the hot seat and ask you why.
Well, first of all, one of the people that I am a fan of is a woman, and she is a woman of color.
Ooh,
and
dodge
she's not
there.
somebody who's being talked about right now. But when you look at it, Republicans at this point in coming towards 2016, I think it was Mike Huckabee was in the lead.
I worked for Mike Huckabee. Yeah, we had a great strategy.
So you've got Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, or Beto O'Rourke in the top three.
Yeah, I think Beto has the best chance out of those three.
Really? He raised $80 million in Texas.
Absolutely.
Carl Rove told me that he could have helped him win. But yeah, he wasn't talking about the right stuff. Real quickly, just in terms of that woman that you like, who is she?
Her name is Tulsi Gabbard, combat veteran. So I think she will actually pull people from the other side of the aisle who aren't comfortable with President Trump. She is also very progressive in her beliefs.
She is very progressive. Yeah. Your thoughts?
It's going to be very interesting because whoever is the nominee for the Democratic Party on the 2020 election is going to determine the narrative of their message. Exactly what do they stand for? Is it going to be the progressive representing the party, or is it going to be...
Is it really about that, or is it more about who can beat President Trump in a marketing sense and center stage on a debate? I think that has a lot of weight. Great to see you both. I have to let you go, but I hope you'll come back.
Absolutely.
I'll be right back. Stay close.